and start it again. 9 years later, this book comes out, and the data is there to back it up. It's online if you want it. But basically, and this may be part of the conversation that you take away, is that he starts off by saying, right here are the three most important things that you, and probably if I could do it again, I would tell my children this, and I am telling my grandchildren this, is that somewhere inside of you, there is a passion to do something. And you may not have disclosed it to anybody, but you feel good about something. You feel very passionate about something. Then the next thing is, okay, you may be passionate about it. For example, I'm very passionate about aviation. I really, really am passionate about aviation. I love aviation. I get motion sick in the movies when people are bouncing around on water. So, you know, I don't fly well, but I have a, but then he says, wait a minute, are you the best in the world at this? I think it goes back to John's question. Are you the best in the world at this? Well, in the book, you'll see that, oh, by the way, what he's really saying is you have a passion for something, but have you committed yourself to getting all of the skills that you need to be the best at what your passion is? And then the third thing is you have a passion for something, you have the skills for it. The question is, does it make a difference? And that's the third part of his thinking, is that if you have the passion and you have the skills, is it worthwhile? And worthwhile is not dollar signs. It's worthwhile is it making a difference for you, for family, for others? Is it making a real difference? And so when you go back and you look at the people who are always, always, always successful, far beyond the expectation in their comparison companies, they have these three ingredients. He also talks about the leader, specifically the leader, and what the leaders tend to do that distinguish them from the rest of the world. And he talks in terms of these people are paranoid. They're afraid that they're going to fail. And so they don't leave anything to chance. They always take extra stuff. They always plan for adversity. They always plan that there's going to be somebody smarter, better, more committed than they. In American football, coaches will say you hear footsteps. People who are afraid to do daring things are afraid of hearing other people's footsteps behind them, chasing them. And so they deal with creativity. And so I think it was to your point, the point of creativity is nice to have a bright idea. But the question then becomes, where is the empirical data that supports that creativity? Having the ability to think of something new is great. The ability to deal with the detailed pieces of it to make it an actual reality becomes a challenge. And then this fanatical discipline. Fanatical discipline in the book, because he and his wife are very, I guess, extreme athletes. They're mountain climbers. They do extremely dangerous things. They put a lot of weight into that fanatical discipline to make sure that they and everybody that is part of their team are disciplined professionals, can get things done, can be relied upon. And if you've read Steve Jobs' book, you know, he goes back to the point of saying, I will take A+ people and I'll make them A+++ people, but I can't take a C person and make them anything else but a C person. And so again, it's a classic case that in these large organizations that do well, that they have this discipline to get things done. The one thing I want you to take away from this chart is it's 5 levels of leadership. The 5 levels of leadership, the distinction is between great organizations and extremely great organizations is the difference between level 4 and level 5. Level 4 CEOs can do everything. They see the future, they have a good design on the future, they can manage all of the silos, the professional silos within the business, they can manage their external relationships and things like that, they can do all that. The level 5 person does that with one clear exception. And I think it's a word that resonates probably more so than we would think. And the word is humility. The people who lead these massively successful organizations, you don't read about them, they aren't on the lecture circuit. And if things go well, they say, well, it wasn't me, it was them. And if things go bad, and this is part of what I do at the Center for Accountable Leaders, is if it goes bad, the leader says, hey, it's my fault, not their fault. Because I didn't do my part right. And I overlooked something and I failed, not that they failed. So if you take anything away, take that, please. So when I talk about my research, I talk in terms of dots. Now remember, Steve Jobs says you can't connect the dots going forward, but maybe I can for you today. Because I talk in terms of big dots and little dots. And when I talk to students, oftentimes, what goes through their minds with big dots and little dots is something like this. They say, oh, big dots, little dots, and they don't understand, but everything comes down to what we think is going to be our career path. Remember that stair step to leadership, the 19 points that the guy was going to be chairman of the board of IBM. We think we start someplace and we do this, we become the chairman of the board over there. May I suggest something different? May I suggest that it is more than coincidental that every person that I know and I respect and I've listened to all probably close to 90 hours now worth of interviews that I've taken personally. And they talk to me personally, we just have to be recording it on film on the side. Somewhere in their past, there is something that when we say, tell me your life story, start wherever you want to start, finish wherever you want to finish. What we're seeing right off the bat is that there's a place in time that they go back in their memory and they say, I like this. This was important. And then they talk about all these other things, these things that happen in their life. And things that they planned on doing don't happen. Total changes of profession. Being fired from jobs, unemployed at the age of 57. What do? You create the world's second largest farm machinery company. Well, what happens is that there's something in the past that jumps over all those dots and you arrive at some place that it just feels right. And you can connect the two big dots. So for example, Oz Nelson, who was the chairman of UPS that brought UPS to Atlanta, talked for probably 10 or 15 minutes about his mother and his mother's commitment to community. He said, oh, my dad worked at the plant. He was a manager at the plant. But Mom did all of these things in the community. I mean, she did everything in this community. His career is, sales and distribution and all this other stuff. And later on, he's at the headquarters of UPS. He's walking down the hallway for no apparent reason, just to get to someplace. And the chairman of the board walks out of his office and meets Oz in the hallway and says, Oz, what do you think about us changing our corporate policy of not soliciting funds from our employees for public good, for charities? Because they had a prohibition against soliciting because they thought it was coercive. And Oz says, well, you know what? If a subordinate asks a senior, it's not coercion. Now, if you're a senior person in an organization and a junior person says, would you give money to charity, that there is a coercion piece. I mean, but it's not an authoritative kind of a coercion. It's a personal coercion. And normally you say, well, what is Vice President so-and-so giving this year? You know, I'll beat him or I'll beat her in the amount of competition. But what it was is he was put in charge of what has become the world's largest single contributor to the United Way in the United States, because of his mother's commitment to community and this accidental encounter. And the chairman only asked one person who was an accidental conversation in a hallway. I said, well, he was the first one we interviewed. And then we started having, it started to happen again and again. There were things that were happening in the past that life in between the beginning, if you will, and later on in success, they were just positioning that person to be at that future place, at that future time, to take advantage of what has happened in their past. So my recommendation is that if you don't know it now, there is something that happened to you, and you may not give it any kind of credibility at all at this stage, but it is real. And if you were to relax and say, where is my happiest remembrance? Where does my body feel right? There's probably a place that is also going to be your success mechanism in the future. Anyway, all 20 people that I've had have had major terminations of what they thought was their career path. Totally, completely different, and had to basically start all over again. And I think the bottom line takeaway, the last recommendation is that failure, even though some people say it's an elixir, failure is failure. How you build that failure into a future success is everything, in my book, that makes an entrepreneur successful, makes a leader successful, and makes us successful as parents and children of our parents. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much. Everybody enjoyed both presentations and also the outstanding discussion dialogue with Professor Jiang. And we're going to actually leave the next 15 minutes for more questions. So I have collected a few questions from the floor already, and then after those, everybody can ask questions too. Okay, so those questions will be for both of you. How to be a good leader and manage the leadership under the different culture of corporate culture, with religion and gender, race, with all those different type of culture background.
Okay. In leadership, as I was mentioning, to me, a leader listens first, understands first, and then makes decisions. So, as we did in a number of projects, we had to understand cultures, we had to understand religions, we had to understand holidays, languages, a lot of different things. So to me, a leader listens first, understands first, and then makes a decision. Because a leader basically is someone that gets other people to do what they want and like it. So if you're going to do what I want and like it, I better understand something about it. So.
Yeah, I would approach it a little bit differently. I take it that, and this is kind of hard for some of my peers at the university to take on it, that when somebody shows up for work or somebody shows up in my classroom, they really are there to do the best that they can do. They're there because they have to do better. They want to do well. So I start off with, do they know where the organization needs to go, what we need to accomplish? And then it's my job is to make sure that, since they're motivated, is to make sure that their motivation and their skill sets are targeted on the successful accomplishment. So mine is more of an enabling approach than others.
Great. Okay. Another question: does non-American culture have any impact on a person's relationship development in the U.S.? How to deal with those factors?
Yeah, I guess American arrogance has a real impact on how well we can do things. Yeah. But I think that there was another question earlier about American culture. I think it is what it is. I think as the professor was saying that, you know, innovation is this thing that comes out of who we are, and as long as we're not arrogant about it, I think that the American culture is good. American culture is bad when it becomes arrogant.
Yeah, and, you know, this culture was built on folks from all over the world. And doesn't mean that you have to be a Native American or whatever to be successful. It's inside you. It's your ability to go into many different cultures. It's your ability to adapt, to learn, to change, and to find out what was the 19 points or whatever they switched it around to. 19. Understand what those are to be successful. So I don't think it's a roadblock. However, in some people's minds, it might be a roadblock. In your mind.
Can I have a follow-up on that question?
Yeah, sure.
So I think maybe we should differentiate between the leaders and the ordinary people. I think in Eastern culture, like Chinese culture, although they common people are humble, right? They kind of, but the leaders are more arrogant because they never wrong. The emperor never wrong. Everything, if something's right, they take all the credit. But if something's wrong, they always find somebody else to blame. See, the American culture is completely different. Like leaders always take the blame. They say, okay, if buck stops here. If something goes wrong, I take the blame. But they, so maybe there's difference between ordinary people and this arrogance you're talking about. Maybe that's just common people, but the leaders are not.
But see, I would say that if you were to strip me down to my basic essence of what I think being an American is that we, regardless of where we are in the chain of leadership, we always go back to the fact that we are of common people. We are of common people, and I think that what relates that there's a new term that came out recently, and it's tied back to an old term. The old term comes out of de Tocqueville's tour, 1830s in the United States, saying there's something different about America. They are exceptional, and we take that American exceptionalism as being a certain amount of arrogance. We're different than everybody else, but the new term really is immigrant exceptionalism, which, and if we're a country of immigrants, every new person, every new culture that comes in, normal people, regular people, find ways to make us better individually and as a whole. I think that was what John was talking about earlier, is that, wait a minute, if you say that the thing that makes us different is that every person who is different can be different and do different things and can be successful, or, like my father, just do the job as assigned. Not any kind of aspiration to be in charge or anything else like that. So I don't think we separate ourselves into leaders and.
Because I think that's a good thing that the common people have more confidence that they don't just fear these authorities. They can say, you are no different from me. Right? That's a healthy thing, right?
If you have an executive that doesn't understand that, they may be successful to a point, but the world is changing and changing and changing. They're really not going to be successful in the future. And let's face it, we learned in this country quite a number of years ago that you do have to do business around the world, that there's a world labor market. There's a lot of things that we've evolved, and someone who doesn't understand to take the best out of every individual is missing. You may run into it, but they're missing both.
In my some 40 years of teaching experience, I listen to what our speakers are saying, which is important, like what are the skills, what are the traits. I'm listening first. The question is, what are you listening? what I have found to be most useful in teaching management and international business has been to take pure philosophy, take the fields of philosophy and collapse them into management. When you want to know about decision making, find out what logic is all about. When you want to know something about the conduct of business, find out what is ethics, what is good, what is bad, what is ethical, what is unethical. When you want to know how to relate to government, you study the role of the individual and of the government. You study the different forms, democracy and all that. And you can go down the line into ecology. And finally you come to metaphysics. What is your purpose in life? What do you think you are? What are you going to accomplish here? You came, you saw, and you left. What are your contributions? One of the great American philosophers, Mortimer Adler, at Aspen Institute in Colorado, has been teaching the presidents of CEOs philosophy and blowing their minds, because here they've been successful, they made money, they did this and they did that, and they still don't know who they are and what is their very function in life. And I said, all of what you heard is great, but how do you help somebody really find who that person is and what is his role in life? And then take it from there and see how he can help, how he can contribute. And we have many examples. So when we're talking about examples of leaders, I mean, I can see people like Bernie Marcus of, Home Depot. He has retired. He has a foundation. He has built the aquarium and gave it to the city to develop economic development through tourism. He's helping the autistic children. His purpose in life is to give everything he has back to the society. And we have many people like this, Carnegie and the libraries, the Coca-Cola people, Scott of UPS. This is what makes sense, but how do you relate this to students is the important thing. And I think philosophy has been very much neglected in this, where it can contribute so much. And Confucius and Aristotle are two of the leaders that we should be studying in understanding management.
So you are a philosopher?
I'd like to make a comment. I think last year I was in the Santa Barbara meeting by Wall Street economy, and they call economy. And there were 200 CEOs, including Bill Gates and everybody. Then they selected one person, they call Jim Rogers, the Duke Power. He said, you are the CEO of the CEO. Tell me, what's your secret? He said, very simple. And I don't emphasize ego. I emphasize eco. I think that was a very good comment from him, from the West point of view. Because he think about eco is much more important than ego. And then he is the best CEO.
Ma'am, you have a question here.
As your idea, how education U.S. government security government can get from Edward Snowden case?
How much can we learn from this Snowden case?
Yes.
Well, we can learn from the Snowden case that given the opportunity, people in power will abuse power.
So you agree with Snowden?
Yes. Leadership always abuse power because they think they have a power. Abuse power. I think leadership sometimes.
But
Most of the time.
the difference becomes, I think, though, that when I talk about arrogance in leadership, the leader who is arrogant, I think, falls into the one who would abuse the powers and the resources. But the other part of what Snowden did and this is the part that I think that I fall on the side of he did good, he did a lot of wrong, is that there are people whose lives and their families' lives were put in jeopardy because he fully disclosed men and women who were participating in the intelligence process, and they are now probably not alive in many of the countries that they were contributing the information to. So Snowden is a different case. Yes, ma'am.
I think we have been here for a while, so
Sure.
I feel like what we are saying, like American culture and Chinese culture sometimes is extremely different.
Yeah.
So I think it's a benefit for us, like for people being here or just being here, to know the difference, like comparison. Like what they're saying, like Chinese, like we always like to obey the leaders. We want you to sit down and be quiet and obey. But here is like the more encourage you to challenge the authority, and you will get rewarded. I used to work for TE for 8 years, and they have the open policy. If you have like the GM here, and you can just, you have any issues, you don't like it, the door is open for you. So in that environment, you'll be more kind of speak out and stand up for you. And in this case, your communication is,
Right.
you will be improved, and this is the way I think we need to aware what's the, what emphasize here, why actually, like what you're saying, the passion is important for the success. But our Asian culture is like, sometimes you have to hide your passion and go against what is harder in the market rather than what you really like. So that makes a totally different.
And I would say that there's absolutely no way that I can make that comparison.
I know.
If I were in China, I could know where I don't fit, and I know what I'm doing wrong or how I should behave. Maybe I'm smart enough to figure it out. And so now the roles are different, and I think you're in a position to be able to say, is that a more comfortable place for me? Back to the basic. Is it more comfortable for me to be that way, or is it more comfortable for me to be a renegade and do creative things? So,
Yeah, the question actually, you mentioned using the link the dots kind of looking forward, but also the correct question is that you have to manage your career rather than by accidentally. So I'm not sure how you guys will convert to say, by accidentally give the good example in the UPS.
Trust me, 30 years as a soldier, okay, I had one of those career paths, and it got changed every 5 or 6 years. I had to start different pathways, different professions.
You noticed I had like 3 paths. Well, you put a path together, and you said this, you put a path together and a plan together. Well, the 19 things may change on it, or an opportunity may come up that will allow you to go someplace else. But think through it, logically think through it. Just don't say, oh wow, this sounds great, let's do it. That's what I mean by managing. I don't think you're going to be able to write down all of the dots all along the way, but manage it. Don't just make a partial decision.
You can only manage it to a degree, okay? You cannot manage the future, you can manage the present.
Because of the time constraints, we'll just have one more question, and then everybody who didn't get a chance to ask, we can either talk more, or you can email me the question, and then I will have the speakers reply to Harry.
Can I ask a question? I think this is a question that I think will benefit us a lot. I think the audience, I think all of us are, English is not a mother tongue, right? So certainly, when we should brag about our achievement or ability, I mean, is it a fine line between bragging about it, promote yourself? I mean, how do you go about really in terms of making sure you are conveying to your boss, you conveying to your organization that, I do possess the special ability or whether it's technical or soft skills, and you name it. I think this is something that most of the Asian Chinese having problem with, is when to brag about your ability, when to promote yourself.
Right. I talk with executives and they say, well, I don't really brag about myself, and I can't really do that. And all I can tell you is that all of the things that I have done, and my business today gets new business because people refer clients. So I'm not out there necessarily, well, I am out there to a degree, right? But, but the point is that if you do a good job, you show the value, you take the initiative, you go to the extra mile in taking the initiative, you find a problem in the organization that you help solve, management will understand, they'll recognize you, they'll see you. I like to do it through results. That's my personal way of doing it. That's what I would say. Just do the results. My business has gone well because of it. All I can say is that's what's worked. So,
Well, thank you very much for the great presentation, and those are all great questions too. If you have more questions, please contact us, and we can get back to you. Just as a token of appreciation, John.
We have
as a token of appreciation, our president and past president would like to present you the certificate of appreciation.
Richard, thank you so much. Thank you for this. All right. And let's have a
Paparazzi.
All right. Okay. So what you
Yeah,
then let's together have to.
Yes, okay. I have to project first, At the state, you use the wrong pattern of the form. Actually, it's not the bad mistake, it's good mistake.
it's a good mistake. That's right.
It's the member of the year.
I like that.
You'll be the next one.
It was honest, the big honest from the association. We're supposed to present this an annual meeting. Also present it today in advance. So I hope you can contribute to the association.
All right. Okay. So let's have a picture together. How about you two hold? No, let's have together. So let's have. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Stop giggling. Stop giggling.
Someday, maybe you have to join our delegation. Because every year we let this.
It's interesting that my first graduate course was taught Chinese
好了，我们下面3点半到5点半，我们是南京嘉宁这个人才招聘会，好吧，大家在这坐一下，马上带你们。
老板娘，帮我跟他照张相。
你去坐一下。我需要你讲一下。
I'm squeezing this one in here. So I'm using it.
I'm maternity.
对，你先试一下装好，这样的我们太少了，大家进来坐来。
到你要坐这边。对，但是他说你说这个什么工作，你识别有，把那个。
商界毕业
是什么？接的人出来。因为我们把后面的